Have you ever received a message so small, but it changed your whole day? Maybe just one sentence. I'm proud of you. Sounds simple, right? But sometimes those 4 words can hit harder than Monday morning alarm clocks. Today's story is emotional, relatable, and perfect for improving your English listening. And trust me, the ending might stay in your mind for a long time. So relax, grab your coffee or your cold pizza from yesterday, no judgment here, and enjoy the story. Ryan was 24 years old and lived in Chicago. He worked at a grocery store during the day and delivered food at night. Life wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't great. Every morning felt exactly the same. Wake up, rush to work, smile at customers, pretend to be happy, go home tired, repeat. Ryan lived alone in a tiny apartment with old brown walls that looked sad even during sunny days. One evening after a long shift, Ryan entered his apartment and threw his keys onto the table. He opened the fridge. Half a tomato, 1 egg, expired milk. Wow, he sighed. A 5-star dinner. He laughed at himself, but deep down, he felt empty. Ryan didn't really have friends anymore. Everyone was busy with their own lives. Some had moved away. Some got married. Others only texted when they needed money or help moving furniture. Funny how nobody calls you until they need a couch lifted. That night, Ryan sat on his bed scrolling through social media. Vacation photos, couple selfies, people buying houses, people getting promotions. Meanwhile, he felt proud when he found matching socks in the morning. He suddenly turned off his phone. I'm tired, he whispered. Not physically, emotionally. The next day at work, an old woman entered the grocery store. She looked around nervously while holding a small shopping list. Ryan noticed her struggling to read the labels on the shelves. Ma'am, can I help you? He asked kindly. The woman smiled. Oh, thank goodness. These tiny letters are attacking my eyes. Ryan laughed. What are you looking for? Soup, she said. The healthy kind. My doctor says I need to stop eating salty food. Apparently, living to 90 requires sacrifice. Ryan helped her find everything on the list. At checkout, she looked at his name tag. Ryan, she said softly, you have kind eyes. Nobody had said something like that to him in years. Thanks. You remind me of my son, she continued. Ryan smiled politely, but he noticed sadness in her voice. Does he live nearby? Ryan asked. The woman paused. He passed away 3 years ago. Ryan's smile slowly faded. I'm sorry, she nodded gently. It's okay. Grief becomes quieter with time, but it never really leaves. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she suddenly smiled again. But enough sadness. If I cry in this store, people will think the onions are too strong. Ryan laughed again. Before leaving, the woman handed him a small folded piece of paper. What's this? He asked. Open it later. Then she walked away slowly with her groceries. That night, Ryan remembered the note. He opened it carefully. Inside it said, Thank you for being kind when you didn't have to be. The world needs more people like you. Ryan stared at the paper silently. It was such a small message, but somehow it broke something inside him. Or maybe healed something. For the first time in months, he cried. Not loud, dramatic movie crying. Just quiet tears, the kind you hide from yourself. After that day, Ryan started noticing people more. The tired single mom buying cheap cereal. The old man counting coins carefully. The teenager working after school with exhausted eyes. Everyone carried invisible problems. Everyone. A few weeks later, the old woman returned to the store. Her name was Eleanor, and every Tuesday, she came to shop and talk with Ryan. Sometimes about life, sometimes about funny things. Once she spent 10 minutes complaining about smartphones. I pressed one wrong button, she said, and suddenly my flashlight turned on. I thought aliens were coming. Ryan laughed so hard he almost dropped a box of cereal. Over time, Eleanor became like family. One snowy evening, Ryan helped her carry groceries to her car. You work too much, Eleanor said. I know. And you worry too much. Ryan smiled. I know that too. She looked at him carefully. What's your dream, Ryan? The question surprised him. Nobody had asked him that in years. I used to want to become a writer, he admitted quietly. Eleanor's eyes widened. A writer? That's wonderful. Not really, Ryan shrugged. I was never good enough. Who told you that? Ryan looked down. My father mostly. Eleanor crossed her arms. Well, your father sounds like someone who would microwave fish in an office kitchen. Ryan burst out laughing. Seriously, she continued, some people destroy dreams because they gave up on their own. Her words stayed in Ryan's mind for days. That weekend he opened his old laptop. Hidden deep inside were short stories he had written years ago. He started reading them. Some were bad. Some were really bad. One sounded like it was written by a sleepy potato, but one story made him stop. It wasn't perfect, but it had heart. For the first time in years, Ryan began writing again. Every night after work, he wrote for 1 hour, then 2 hours. Sometimes he was exhausted. Sometimes he wanted to quit. But Eleanor kept encouraging him. Months passed. One afternoon, Ryan walked into the store smiling nervously. Eleanor immediately noticed. What happened? Ryan handed her a printed email. Her eyes moved across the page. Then she gasped. They accepted your story? Ryan nodded. A small online magazine wanted to publish his work. It didn't pay much. Actually, it paid almost nothing, enough for maybe 2 coffees and emotional damage. But Ryan didn't care. Someone believed in his writing. Eleanor hugged him tightly. I told you, she whispered. Ryan felt happier than he had in years. But life doesn't always warn you before changing again. One Tuesday, Eleanor didn't come to the store. Ryan waited. No Eleanor. The next week, still nothing. He felt worried. Finally, after another week, a young woman entered the grocery store asking for him. Are you Ryan? Yes. The woman smiled sadly. I'm Eleanor's granddaughter. Ryan's stomach tightened. She talked about you all the time. Ryan felt fear growing inside him. She passed away peacefully last week, the granddaughter said softly. Ryan couldn't speak. It felt unreal. The woman handed him a small box. She wanted you to have this. That night, Ryan sat alone in his apartment holding the box. Inside was a notebook. On the first page, Eleanor had written, For Ryan, the writer with kind eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he turned the pages. The notebook was filled with short notes Eleanor had written over the months. Little reminders, little lessons. Never trust people who clap when the plane lands. Buy comfortable shoes. Sad feet create angry people. Call people you love before it's too late. Ryan smiled through tears. Then he reached the final page. There was one last message. Ryan, you once helped a lonely old woman find soup, but you really helped her feel seen. Never underestimate small kindnesses, and never abandon your gift. The world is already full of people who stop believing in themselves. Don't become one of them. Love, Eleanor. Ryan closed the notebook slowly. Outside, snow was falling softly across the city. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. A year later, Ryan published his first novel. At the book signing event, hundreds of people waited in line to meet him. One reader asked him, Who inspired you to become a writer? Ryan smiled gently. An old woman who needed help finding soup. And honestly, sometimes the people who change our lives don't arrive with big speeches or dramatic music. Sometimes they just appear quietly, in grocery stores, holding shopping lists and teaching us how to believe again. So today, if you feel invisible, if you feel tired, if life feels heavy right now, remember this. A small act of kindness can change someone forever, maybe even you, and maybe your story isn't over yet. A few months after Ryan's book was published, life became strange. Not movie star strange, Nobody was chasing him for autographs in supermarkets, although one guy at a gas station did stare at him for 10 seconds before saying, "Hey, do I know you?" Ryan got excited. Maybe the man recognized him from the book cover. Then the guy added, "You look exactly like my cousin Steve." So yeah, fame was going great. But little by little, people actually started reading his stories online. Messages arrived every day. One woman wrote, "Your story helped me during depression." Another person said, "I started writing again because of you." Ryan read every message carefully because he remembered what it felt like to believe nobody noticed you. One rainy evening, Ryan visited a small cafe near downtown Chicago. It was quiet, warm, and smelled like coffee and cinnamon, basically heaven. He sat near the window with his laptop and began writing. After about 20 minutes, a teenage girl approached his table nervously. "Excuse me, are you Ryan Carter?" Ryan looked up. "Yeah." Her eyes widened. "Oh my gosh, I knew it." Ryan smiled awkwardly. "Hopefully that's a good thing." "It is," she laughed. "Your story made me cry in math class." "Wow," Ryan nodded seriously. "That's powerful. Algebra usually causes enough suffering already." The girl laughed loudly. Then her smile slowly faded. "I actually wanted to thank you." Ryan closed his laptop. She took a deep breath. "My older brother passed away last year." Ryan's expression softened immediately. "And after that, I stopped talking to people. I stopped drawing too." She looked down at the floor. "Then I read your story about Eleanor." Ryan stayed silent. "I don't know why," she continued, "but it made me feel understood." For a moment, Ryan couldn't find words, because once upon a time, he was the lonely person needing encouragement. Now somehow, he was giving it to others. The girl smiled weakly. "So thank you." Before leaving, she handed him a folded piece of paper. Ryan blinked in surprise. Déjà vu. After she left, he opened the note. It said, "Your words made me feel less alone." Ryan leaned back slowly in his chair. Funny, life had come full circle. Years ago, Eleanor gave him a small note that changed his life. Now he was receiving one from a stranger. And suddenly, Ryan understood something important. Kindness spreads quietly, like ripples in water. You may never see how far it reaches. Outside the cafe, rain tapped softly against the windows. Ryan looked around at people passing by. A tired father carrying groceries, a woman talking loudly on the phone, a delivery driver eating fries alone in his car, everyone fighting battles nobody else could see, everyone hoping for something better. Ryan suddenly remembered something Eleanor once told him. The strongest people aren't the loudest ones. They're the people who keep going even when life becomes heavy. At the time, he didn't fully understand it. Now he did. The next morning, Ryan woke up early and visited his old grocery store. Almost everything looked the same. The bright lights, the shopping carts with broken wheels, the freezer section cold enough to freeze your soul. One of his old co-workers saw him and shouted, "Look who came back!" Ryan laughed as they hugged. "Miss us?" "I miss employee discounts," Ryan admitted. As he walked through the aisles, memories returned quickly. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the quiet hopelessness he used to carry every day. He stopped near the soup section. Same shelves, same brands, same place where he met Eleanor. For a long moment, Ryan just stood there silently. Then he smiled. A young employee nearby, I looked confused. "You okay, man?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah?" Then he looked at the soup cans and chuckled softly. "You have no idea." Before leaving the store, Ryan noticed an older man struggling to reach something from a high shelf. Without thinking, Ryan walked over. "Need help?" The man sighed dramatically. Yes, whoever designed these shelves clearly hated short people. Ryan grabbed the item for him. "Here you go." "Thank you," the man smiled. "You're very kind." Ryan froze for half a second. The exact same words Eleanor once told him. And somehow, at that moment, It felt like she was still there, not physically, but in the kindness she left behind. That night, Ryan sat at home writing again, but this time something felt different. He no longer wrote because he wanted success, or money, or fame. He wrote because stories connect people. Stories remind us we're human, that heartbreak is shared, that loneliness is shared, that hope is shared too. Around midnight, Ryan received a text message from his younger sister, Emma. Now, Ryan and Emma weren't super close growing up, mostly because siblings communicate through insults until age 25. But recently, they had started talking more. Emma's message said, "Mom told me about your book event. Proud of you." Ryan stared at the screen silently. 3 simple words. Proud of you. Funny how words become more powerful when you spend years needing them. Ryan smiled and typed back, "Thanks. Also remember when you broke my PlayStation and blamed the dog?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "We agreed never to speak of that." Ryan laughed out loud. For the first time in years, his apartment no longer felt lonely. It felt peaceful. Weeks later, Ryan was invited to speak at a local high school about writing. Honestly, he was terrified. Speaking in front of teenagers is dangerous. Teenagers can smell fear. He stood nervously in front of the classroom. "Hi," he began awkwardly. "I'm Ryan. I write emotional stories that make grown adults cry in public." A few students laughed. Good start. One student raised his hand. "How do you become successful?" Ryan thought carefully before answering. "Honestly?" The room became quiet. "I think success is when your life finally feels meaningful." The students listened closely. Ryan continued, "For years I thought success meant money or popularity, but the happiest moments of my life came from human connection." He told them about Eleanor, about kindness, about believing in yourself even when life becomes difficult. When the class ended, one quiet student stayed behind. "I like writing too," the boy admitted softly, "but I'm not very good." Ryan smiled gently. "Neither was I." The boy laughed nervously. Ryan picked up his backpack and said something he wished someone had told him years earlier. "You don't have to be amazing when you start. You just have to start." The boy nodded slowly. And once again, Ryan saw himself in someone else. Years later, Ryan would become a best-selling author. People around the world would read his stories. But strangely, his favorite memory would never be the awards, or the money, or the interviews. It would always be one simple moment. A lonely young man helping an old woman find soup in a grocery store. Because sometimes the smallest moments quietly become the biggest turning points of our lives. And maybe that's true for you too. Maybe right now your life feels ordinary. Maybe you think nothing important is happening, but somewhere ahead of you there may be a conversation, a stranger, a small decision that changes everything forever. So keep going, keep believing, keep being kind, because your story is still being written, and the next chapter might be the one that changes your life. 2 years later, Ryan's life looked completely different. He had moved into a brighter apartment. Not super fancy, no golden elevators, no swimming pool on the roof, just an apartment where the walls didn't look emotionally exhausted. For Ryan, that was success. His books were selling well now, and people often recognized him in public. Although sometimes it was still awkward. One woman once stared him inside a supermarket for 5 full minutes. Ryan finally smiled politely and said, "Hi." The woman gasped dramatically. "I knew it." Ryan prepared himself. Maybe she was a fan. Maybe she loved his books. Then she said, "You're the guy from my dentist's office." So apparently Ryan had one of those faces. Still, life was better. Not perfect, but meaningful. And honestly, meaningful is underrated these days. One cold November morning, Ryan received a phone call from his publisher. "We want you to go to Boston for a book event next weekend." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Boston? Yes, big audience, lots of readers. Ryan smiled nervously. Do they know I'm socially awkward? His publisher laughed. You'll survive. A week later, Ryan arrived in Boston carrying one suitcase and exactly zero confidence. The city was beautiful. Cold wind, busy streets, people walking fast like every second mattered. Ryan checked into his hotel and immediately got lost trying to find his room. At one point, he accidentally entered a cleaning closet. A hotel worker looked at him strangely. Ryan nodded seriously. Yes, this is exactly where I wanted to be. The event was held in a large bookstore downtown. Hundreds of chairs filled the room. Readers stood in long lines holding copies of his books. Ryan took a deep breath. Even after all this time, it still felt unreal. The event began smoothly. People asked questions. He told jokes. Everyone laughed when he said, "Writing emotional stories is easy. The hard part is emotionally recovering afterward." Then, near the end of the signing session, Ryan noticed an older man standing quietly in line, maybe 70 years old. Gray jacket, gentle eyes. When he finally reached the table, he placed a worn copy of Ryan's first book down carefully. "This book means a lot to me," the man said softly. Ryan smiled warmly. "Thank you." The man hesitated. "My wife passed away last year." Ryan's expression changed immediately. "And after she died, I stopped talking to people. I stopped leaving the house." Ryan listened silently. Then the man continued, "One day my granddaughter gave me your book." His voice shook slightly. "There's a line in it I'll never forget." Ryan stayed quiet. The man opened the book carefully and pointed to a sentence. "Grief is just love with nowhere to go." Ryan stared at the page. He barely remembered writing those words, but hearing them now felt different. The older man smiled sadly. "When I read that, I cried for the first time since my wife died." Ryan swallowed hard. "I'm really glad the story helped." The man nodded slowly. "Thank you for writing something honest." After the event ended, Ryan walked alone through the cold Boston streets. The city lights reflected across wet sidewalks. Cars passed slowly. People laughed inside restaurants. But Ryan kept thinking about that man, about grief, about loneliness, about human connection. And suddenly he realized something. Stories don't just entertain people. Sometimes they heal people. Sometimes they save people. Back at the hotel, Ryan couldn't sleep. So he opened his laptop and started writing. Not because of deadlines, not because of money, because his heart felt full. Hours passed. At around 2 a.m., Ryan finally stopped typing and looked out the window. Snowflakes were falling softly over the city, and for the first time in years, he felt proud of himself. Not arrogant, not famous, just proud. Because the younger version of himself, the lonely grocery store worker who felt invisible, would never believe this life was possible. The next morning, Ryan visited a small diner before his flight home. An elderly waitress approached his table. "What can I get you, sweetheart?" Ryan smiled. "Coffee, and maybe emotional stability if that's on the menu." The waitress laughed loudly. "Honey, if we sold that, this place would be rich." Ryan ordered pancakes too, because emotional conversations require pancakes. That's science. As he ate, he noticed a young couple sitting nearby arguing quietly. The girl looked frustrated. The guy looked exhausted. Neither seemed truly angry, just tired. Ryan remembered something Eleanor once said. Most people aren't difficult, they're hurting. That sentence had stayed with him for years. And honestly, it explained so much about the world. Sometimes people are rude because they're lonely. Sometimes people are cold because they're scared. Sometimes people push others away because they secretly fear rejection. Human beings are complicated, like IKEA furniture with emotions. When Ryan returned to Chicago, winter had fully arrived. Snow covered the sidewalks. The air hurt his face. And every person outside walked like they regretted all their life choices. One evening, Ryan received an unexpected email. Subject line, "Do you remember me?" He opened it curiously. It was from the teenage girl he met in the cafe years earlier, the one who said his story helped her after losing her brother. Her name was Lily. The email said, "Hi Ryan, you probably don't remember me, but we met in the cafe a few years ago. You encouraged me to continue drawing. Well, I wanted to tell you something. Next month, my artwork will be displayed in a real gallery for the first time. And honestly, I don't think I would have started again without that conversation. So thank you. You changed my life more than you realize." Ryan sat frozen in silence, then slowly leaned back in his chair. It was happening again. Another ripple. Another life touched through kindness. Ryan smiled to himself. Eleanor would have loved this. A few days later, Ryan visited Eleanor's grave carrying fresh flowers. Snow covered the cemetery quietly. Ryan stood there for a long moment. Then he laughed softly. "You were right, you know." Cold wind moved through the trees. Ryan looked down at the flowers. "I thought success would fix loneliness," he said quietly. "But it turns out connection is what really matters." For a moment, everything felt still, peaceful. Then Ryan smiled again. "Oh, and by the way, I finally learned how to cook." He paused. "Sort of." Ryan imagined Eleanor laughing. "You would still complain about my pasta." A small smile stayed on his face as snowflakes fell around him. Then he whispered something he wished he could have said years earlier. "Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible." As Ryan walked away, he realized something important. Most people never truly know the impact they have on others. A kind teacher, a patient friend, a stranger who listens, a person who believes in you at the right moment. They may forget those moments completely, but for someone else, those moments become life-changing memories. So if you're listening right now and life feels difficult, please remember this. You matter more than you think. Your kindness matters. Your words matter. Your presence matters. Even if nobody says it. Even if life feels slow right now. Even if you feel lost. Because somewhere in the future, someone may tell a story about how you changed their life. And maybe you won't even realize you did it.